So this particular game has taken quite a while to do, simply because I thought when I started playing it that it was a rather short game that I could complete easily. Sadly, I was really wrong. It took so many attempts and so much frustration to finish. My first memory of Bignose the Caveman wasn't actually when it was called Bignose. It was actually called Dinobasher, being released for the Sega Master System, and was being reviewed in the latest issue of Sonic the Comic, and it got a pretty average score. It seems that a lot of reviewers gave the game an average score, which prompted Codemasters to pull the game away from release despite it being ready to ship. Naturally, many years have passed, and I have since picked up a reproduction cartridge of that very game. But I was very surprised when I saw this one being played on Atari Crypt's channel, as I didn't even think to look for it on a home computer port. It was probably the name change that threw me off guard. Bignose the Caveman was released in 1991 by Codemasters for the NES, Amiga, and of course this Atari ST version. There was also a Game Gear version that was in development that probably went the same way as the Sega Master System edition. Bignose is a 2D platformer where you simply have to get to the end of the level and defeat the boss before the timer runs out. His only real attack comes from his caveman club. However, I will say that in its initial form, it is virtually useless. You have a cripplingly short attack range, and more often than not, you will be killed before you have a chance to swing. As a result, one of the most difficult enemies in the game is actually the first enemy you see, because of the creature's nature to run quickly. Apart from this, the game does play rather well with the joystick, with Bignose being very responsive to your movements. Thankfully, there are 2 weapon upgrades, which allows you to throw projectiles. Collecting these are a virtual requirement to progress in the game, particularly as this also gives you an extra hit, because otherwise you will have to deal with a one-hit death. Graphically, I wouldn't say that Bignose represents the best visuals on the Atari ST. The visuals are drawn well and smooth enough, complete with some solid scrolling. The best sprites are reserved for the big dinosaur bosses at the end of the stages. Overall, the game does look alright, but it does suffer a little bit from repeated assets. Yes, bosses are repeated, and some levels look awfully similar at times. The level design isn't particularly great. Sometimes in a level, I can hit the ceiling, despite there not being one there. The oddest design choice is in the cave levels, where you not only have to go down a pit to progress, and every other drop in the game kills you by the way, there's also a section in level 12 where you can actually get stuck on a screen. I'm not sure if this is a bug, but I found out the only way to progress is to hit a very particular block earlier on in the level to make the screen shake. But nowhere in the game does it tell you to do this or even give you a hint, and no other level seems to have this odd thing, so hence I assumed it was a bug. My biggest pet peeve with this game is something which happens with a lot of platformers back in the day, and now thankfully is more or less a dead practice. That is the timer. Now, in the early levels, you'll have plenty of time to get to the end and defeat the boss. But once you get past about level 5, you will virtually have to run through each and every level spraying bullets or coconuts or whatever they're supposed to be, hoping that everything dies in your path, just so you can do it in time. I can't tell you how many times I died on the boss simply because I decided to be cautious. In fact, the timer is so bad that the final level, level 14, I swear is impossible to beat unless you're willing to lose a life. Why? Because this level is one of the 2 auto-scrollers in the game, so you can't even rush the level. And when you do get to the boss, there's only around about 24 seconds left, which isn't frankly anywhere near enough. Thankfully a timer resets after death and you can start the boss level with a full timer, but otherwise it would be impossible. I was actually impressed with the length of this game. I was under the impression when I got to the end of the first island that I was at the end of the game. Turns out that I was actually completely wrong. The game just carried on, albeit some of the levels do look awfully similar and the bosses do tend to repeat. But content wise, there's just about enough to keep you entertained. It's not the easiest title either. The lack of a life bar means that you have to be careful. Overall, Bignose the Caveman is distinctly average. It's annoying in many aspects. It feels like a smaller, low-budget game that doesn't really do anything majorly wrong, but at the same time there are noticeable problems. So I wouldn't be surprised if you hated it, but it's not one which is going to get on many people's best of lists. If you want to see a full playthrough of this game, there will be a separate video for this one. I'll put the link below, but I did eventually manage to finish this one.